Welcome to Basic Black. Some of you are joining us on our broadcast, and others of you are joining us on our digital platforms. I'm Rahsaan Hall, President and CEO of the Urban League of Eastern Massachusetts, and your host this evening. Tonight, the state of black men and boys, Part 2. We are continuing our conversation about the challenges facing young black men and boys in our communities. In Part 1, we discussed ongoing issues around employment, mental health, and role models. This evening, we'll examine educational opportunities, misconceptions about who we are, and the meaning of manhood. Joining us again tonight for our conversation, Dr. Kevin Simo is a pediatric psychiatrist at Boston Children's Hospital and Chief Behavioral Health Officer at the Boston Public Health Commission for the City of Boston. Jonathan Allen is the co-founder and director of development at Leadership Brainery, an organization that creates equitable access to master's and doctoral degrees and workforce leadership opportunities for young leaders from underrepresented backgrounds. Adrian Major is the founder of Dreamcatcher Initiative, an organization that creates pathways and programs to empower youth and will help them achieve their dreams and realize their potential. James Mackey, Vice Chair of the Black Men and Boys Commission for the City of Boston. He is also a community advocate, a Black male health and wellness group facilitator, and the founder of Brothers Building, as well as the founder of Different, a clothing brand focused on social and emotional wellness, and Gabriel Petit, who is a Dreamcatcher Initiative mentee and participant. Welcome to you all. So last time when we spoke, we were talking about a range of topics. We ended the conversation on this issue of male role models and mentors, particularly as it related to mental health. So Dr. Simo, I want to pick up with you again and really dive into the impact of not addressing our mental or behavioral health issues and why that is so important for us as black men.
Yeah, so, there's been studies that highlight growing rates of depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts and attempts. And one of the more shocking statistics is that black boys, particularly 5 to 11 years old, over the past couple of decades have actually had a stark rise in suicidal thoughts and attempts. And so in terms of the worst kind of outcome that could come from not addressing mental health, it would be thinking about ending one's life. And so attempting to address mental health is critical because it literally is life-saving.
Mm-hmm. Adrian, you're on the front lines. You're working with young men who are system involved or about to be system involved or used to be system involved. And sometimes their behaviors are an outgrowth of some unaddressed, if not undiagnosed, mental health issues. How do you see that in the work that you do? And what type of efforts are you engaged in to make sure that they're addressing some of those mental health issues?
Thank you for the question. I think one of the major points is that we don't really talk about mental health enough. So it's not conversations that readily in the home. So to ask those questions is like, are you feeling okay? How you doing or how you feeling? Have you ever talked to somebody? When they're dealing with strong issues, that's somebody lost a great friend of theirs, or a teacher pissed them off and don't know how to handle it. They think it's through violence and not through conversation. I think it's just when you see it at hand, it's worth asking the question, have you ever talked to somebody? I think the biggest thing sometimes is sometimes you don't want to talk about it, but it's a difference between talking about it and then walking them through the door too. So if you really want to talk to somebody, I'll go there with you, and we could do it together. I can't be in the room, but at least I can be part of the introduction.
Yeah, I think the camaraderie and the partnership and the brotherhood is so important. And so, James, I know that was some of the work that you were doing with Brothers Building. Sure. I had the privilege and honor to be invited into that space to share with brothers who were building, but a core component of that work was to really address how brothers were feeling and mental health issues. Can you talk a little bit about the Brothers Building Group, what it was doing, some of the impacts that it's had?
Yeah, no, thank you for the question. So Brothers Building was a co-creative space of black men that were dealing with a lot of traumatic issues that they've dealt with since their upbringing and didn't know how to address those issues and wanted an outlet. And so our mission for Brothers Building was to improve holistic wellness one black man at a time. And so we would hold space for black men where they felt okay to speak about the issues that they were going through, to be vulnerable, to have conversations with brothers that dealt with like-minded issues, that could talk to you about some of the issues and walk with you along how you can address some of the ills that you may be dealing with, whether it be dealing with like, yo, I got some issues with my wife's son. You know what I mean? Excuse me, like you have issues with your baby mother's, your baby mother, like how to walk through and talk through those issues so that you don't make an ill decision that can end you somewhere that's uncomfortable, right? These things we need to continue to talk about, because if we continue to hold it in our mind, it impacts our well-being. And for us to be present for other folks that we love and that we're around and that we're in community with, we have to address it, and it's important. So those were the things that we did, and we were intentional with everything that we did. We even did hikes, we worked out together, we went to events together, we watched movies that related to issues that we were talking about, and we'll have open discussions about it. But we need to create those spaces for brothers, and that's how we address some of the mental health issues that we're dealing with on a daily basis.
I think it's so important for men in general, but black men in particular, to have those safe spaces for us to explore some of the experiences that we're having, the things that Dr. Simo, that you talked about, that we are carrying with us from our childhood. Jonathan, can you explore or share how it's important to be able to share what your experiences have been, particularly around identity formation? I know that you take pride in being a black gay man, but that there have been a part of your formative years and experiences where maybe that wasn't something that you were experiencing, and how you carried that with you. Why is that so important, to be able to have access to spaces and places where we can explore those experiences?
Because if you are living a life half full, you're not living. And I got tired of living that life, especially as a young leader. I grew up as a childhood preacher, and so I had a lot of responsibility and pressure on me to behave in a certain way, show up in a certain way. And so here I am putting my all into helping make everybody else's life amazing and better. While struggling with how I show up as my most authentic self. Right. So it's been a journey for me, a real journey for me. And it hadn't always been the case. There were many years where I said for sure, I'm just going through a little phase. And everything around me kind of affirmed that, from my community, who had all kind of negative narratives and stereotypes about people in the LGBTQ plus community, and many of those same thoughts I harbored and thought about myself. And so I've done a lot of work to unlearn and to rid myself of the self-hate that I was struggling with for so many years, all the way to the point, and I'm going to say this very boldly, and I've said it in other forums as well, where I had to make a decision religiously that I was willing to go to hell if it meant I gained joy. And a sense of peace and somebodiness. And, we can get into the debate. I have a Master's of Theological Studies and plenty of years in ministry to dive into dialogue with people about that statement that I make. I truly believe that we are here on this earth to live our most fulfilled lives. And if you are waking up every day regretting that you are who you are, what way to live? Right. And our families and our loved ones and the people in our lives, if they really love us, then they ought to want to see us live our most fulfilled lives too. Now, what happens to you in the afterlife and once you're gone from here, I really do think that's everybody's individual business at the end of the day.
Right.
And we need to come together as community, really, because many of our young people are living some of the most depressed lives simply because they can't be themselves.
So that raises for me this idea. I mean, I think there is a religious / spiritual conversation that can be had, but I think there's something that is more germane to our conversation here today, which is the definition of manhood
Itself.
How do we begin to define that or understand that? Because I think part of what people are struggling with when it comes to mental health issues is, am I being a man? Am I man enough? And so, Jonathan, if you could briefly just kind of, how do you describe it for people who are wanting to engage with you in conversation, or we were talking about black men? What is manhood for you?
I think that first and foremost, manhood is a social construct, just like womanhood is. And I think that all of these conversations beckon that we first ask ourselves, who's not a part of the conversation that should be?
Right.
I don't know if any of us here are transgender. We have transgender men and women in our communities who have a perspective on what manhood means to them and what womanhood means to them, and their voices and perspectives must be a part of this dialogue to even help us unpack that conversation more fully and more with integrity, right? Because the truth is we're not all the same. And we don't all have the same exact journey and lived experience and identity. And so really, I think manhood, as is womanhood, must be defined by individuals because the challenge with doing so communally is that we then get into the Olympics on whose experience is more right and more deserving to be prioritized as the mainstream or as the standard. And so I won't even delve into giving manhood a formal definition, because I think we need to be less concerned about defining manhood and more concerned about defining community and what it means for us to stand and uplift each other with our various backgrounds and perspectives.
That's a great point, and thank you for that. And I think the piece around inclusion in the conversation is an important one. I regularly have conversations with my son, who is trans, and exploring this idea of what it means to be a man, and being honest that I was raised at a time where manhood was prescribed a certain way, and that would not encompass who he is and the beauty and fullness of his life. So thank you for raising that.
Kay is amazing.
Hey, Kay is something special. I love him. James, as a father raising a son, I've witnessed how much you pour into him. And I think Jonathan raises a significant point about, let's kind of break away from these pre-described or predefined notions of what manhood is. But how do you raise your son to be a good person?
Wow. I love that question. And that means everything to me, because that's exactly what I want my son to be, is a great person in a society that deems him as the problem to so many ills that this world has put upon him, on us. And so how do I teach my son to be a good person is really understanding who he is in his upbringing and teaching him skills that will help him throughout the way of navigating this world that we live in. And again, it's so cold towards him. For him to have the mindset to think before he reacts, to be loving and caring to his family, his friends, his peers, to make sure he calls and checks on people to make sure that they are all right. To, when I'm at a protest showing up for Black lives or for young men or sisters around issues that impact them, that he's front and center and he's with me. Or when we're talking about mass incarceration and the hypercriminalization of Black men in our society, and he's standing right there with me. Modeling it is how I'll teach him how to be a good person.
That's fantastic. Gabriel, you have had some important mentors in your life who have shown you some positive things. Can you talk a little bit about, your connection to Adrian and the impact that he's had on your life, and how you are paying it forward with the work that you're doing now?
I met Adrian on the streets. He was a street worker before he was the CEO of Dreamcatchers Initiative. He saw me, he showed me love, and I was not doing the right thing on the streets. But he always kept persistent with me. So whenever I see another young brother out there on the streets, on the same streets that he found me on, I always ask them what they're doing, If they're in some trouble, I try to take them out of it, try to lead them down the right route. And I tell them a lot about my business.
And so what does your business do?
Lotus brings as I sell clothes, I sell streetwear, but based off the lotus flower and promoting peace and unity. I also have an herbal side of my business that I'm opening up. I'm going to sell natural soaps and natural sea moss.
Oh, that's fantastic. Look, we're going to have to hit brother up and make sure we get some of those soaps and sea moss. So I want to pivot a little bit because there is this conversation that is happening that has consumed the internets, and it involves this idea of masculinity and manhood. And I might do a straw poll. Is it K-Dot or Drake? Who we vote for? Hands for Drake.
I saw that.
No. Oh, hands for K-Dot.
He was looking at me crazy back there.
Listen, I'm going for the brother that wasn't mentioned, J. Cole.
So there it is. So for folks who are unaware, there has been this ongoing rap beef that has some years to it, but most notably in the last maybe week and a half, 2 weeks, there's been a volley of diss tracks back and forth between Kendrick Lamar and Drake. And early on, J. Cole was a part of it, but why is J. Cole in this conversation for you, James, so important?
For sure, because he's a model of what it means to step up and stand out on what he truly believes in. And he felt something wasn't right about the whole situation and excluded himself before. He apologized first and then excluded himself from the conversation. And I think that is extremely important and imperative in this mass stream of music industry and media and how black men and black life is perpetuated. For him excluding himself from that space and the ripple effect that what Drake and Kendrick Lamar, how that's impacting not only folks in the industry, but our young people that are watching, that hurts me internally. And so I felt when J. Cole apologized, I felt that, and I knew why he did it. And that's why I choose J. Cole.
So, Adrian, what's your reaction on that?
Well, I think it was when you look at music, historically when we're beefing, we're going back and forth with each other. To have somebody like J. Cole apologize and then take his ownership, which was huge for me, to say, yo, I talked trash about this dude's album and it ain't true, and I'm stepping down, and I know some shots are going to be fired at me, but I'm okay with it. But I'm not going to respond. It's a big stand, because now you get to see the examples of colorism. You get to see the examples of light skin, dark skin. You get the examples, all of it playing out in real time. That we're actually talking about issues that's been long driven from years and years in play. But I think it goes back to, in this, it's like, did anybody win? I don't think nobody won. I think it's like it's back at ground zero, just with so many derogatory terms at each other, and that is culturally a shock for everybody that we even at this level. That has to be evaluated and viewed. And I think J. Cole took the mature route and said, you know what, we don't need to do this. Why can't we just keep it on doing music? But I'm going to apologize for stepping out, having a knee-jerk reaction, because I know culturally, I don't know why we got to be in a lion's den, why we both can't survive. But it's always survival of the fittest. But when it comes down to it, it's really about, it's a lot of elements in this beef. It isn't just wordplay. It's business, it's reputation. So
yeah. Dr. Simo, you with me raising our hands for K-Dot, but I think Adrian makes a very valid point. I mean, we can love the bars, we can love the bop that Not Like Us is that they're playing in the clubs. But there is this very real impact that there are casualties of this. The number of women and children who are casualties of war, of this particular war, who get dragged through this, they ain't got nothing to do with it. What are the broader implications of this rap beef for as much as it may be entertaining for us? What are the implications of it?
Right. So in reference to J. Cole, we'd say he demonstrated the most emotional intelligence, right? He saw beef was happening, kind of engaged. He's like, hold up, why am I even doing this? And unfortunately for his record label, it's like, well, why aren't you doing this, right? Because there's a business model of, can we demonstrate, certain people when they engage, irrespective of the outcome that might happen, which might be lives lost, which might be misogyny is profiled, it's helping somebody gain $1. In reference to K-Dot and Drake, when you listen to their lyrics, there's a lot of accusations that are thrown, and what's true, what's not true, and some of the things that are described, in terms of your earlier question about how do you raise a good person, there's a lot of things that are described in the tracks that I have a daughter and a son. I would not want them to be a recipient of some of the acts or be a perpetrator of some of those acts. Yet those acts and how it's portrayed in terms of the history of music, for certain community, it's okay culturally to acknowledge that you don't like somebody and you're willing to do certain things. And so it does perpetuate a willingness, unfortunately, of particularly younger people to engage in certain kinds of behaviors. I've had patients where I know they have lost a loved one to firearm violence, and I say, how are you feeling? And they try to toughen it out, like, oh, it was bound to happen. It's like, no, that shouldn't be a norm. Exactly. That it was bound to happen that you lost a friend at 15. That's not okay. And so those are things that can happen that industry labels are probably not necessarily thinking about.
So here we find ourselves again winding down with not enough time to delve into so many of the issues that have come up in this conversation. But I would like everyone to just kind of briefly, what is your hope for black men and boys? How do we walk away from this series of conversations that we've had with inspiration and with hope? And so, Jonathan, I'll start with you.
Well, for black men and boys, I want us to remind ourselves that we are interconnected, we're interrelated, and we are interdependent. We need each other. At the end of the day, regardless of where we come from, regardless of how much money we have, what we've gone through, what we've overcome, what our identities are, who we love, who we like, we need each other. And to be very intentional about developing a sense of somebodyness, as Dr. King and others have really spent time impressing upon us. That sense that I'm somebody, I got power, we're somebodies, and we got power is just super necessary because we're navigating a world that doesn't value us. Knowing who we are is really key at the end of the day. And so believe in ourselves and dig in it and come together like never before.
Wonderful. James, what's your word of hope or inspiration for black men and boys?
Malcolm X has this quote that says, if we turn I into we, even illness will become wellness.
Come on.
Right now.
And with that, that's what I want for us as black men, to be well, to be whole, to be seen, to be taken care of holistically.
All right, Gabriel.
Your body is your temple. Watch what you put inside of it. Watch what you think about.
Adrian.
Sun Tzu said, we first win, then go to war. Don't go to war to attempt to win. So first we have to, what is the battle before we start? And a lot of it is, we've been misdirected, we need to be redirected. And we have to do the things that we should do to put a smile on our face. And it's just as important as the beef going on with Kendrick and Drake. If we put that same energy towards our greatness, it's endless.
That's right. Dr. Seaman.
Yes, I would echo everything that the brothers just mentioned in reference to you are somebody, you should be loved. You should be able to experience all of the range of emotions. And so the idea of trying to contain some of those emotions, don't necessarily always believe that, and there are avenues to seek help. We across the city are currently having a Rise Up Youth Mental Health Summit, and there'll be 2 more, May 28th and then also June 3rd, where parents and then providers can be engaged in thinking about mental health supports, services, and one of the topics that will be discussed is Black adolescent and young adult mental health.
Fantastic.
And let me just say, and you can be anything that you desire to be.
Be different.
Seriously. You can be
authentic.
anything that you want to be. So go after it and don't let nobody hold you back and tell you what you can and cannot do.
Name it and claim it.
That's right.
I love it. Well, that is the end of our broadcast and the end of our show. Thank you to all of our guests, and thank you for watching. Now stay with us as we continue our conversation on our digital platforms, Facebook and YouTube. I'm Rahsaan Hall, your host. We are on YouTube and Facebook with our post show, continuing our discussion on the state of Black men and boys. So we talked about a lot of things over the last show and the show before, but one of the things that we did not delve into at all really is Black men's relationship with women. And so I think, you know, James, you've referenced a couple of times in your talking points your relationship with your wife and how you show up. Where did you get your understanding of how to interact with women, how to show up for women, how to treat women?
Good question. I'm still learning. It's an ongoing learning process. I don't have all the answers, but as long as I stay open and willing to have that conversation with my wife and my daughters and my mother, then I'll continue to get better at, you know, making sure that I'm there, being present for them and with them. I think going back to, again, the issues that we deal with on a consistent basis with Black men, sometimes we're so focused on what we are dealing with, we forget about our better half and about those that have been loving on us, that birthed us, and how we're interacting with them, showing up with them, for them. I'm reminded all the time, because I'm the only guy at home. I'm with nothing but my wife and my daughters. My son is coming soon. However, I have to be intentional with my actions, with my words, and the things that I'm doing, and especially seeing that my daughters are watching me love on my wife. I want to do that intentionally. I want to do that because that's what I love to do. But I'm learning that because my wife tells me what she needs from me, and I have to really listen and not always be in my mind, in my head about what I got going on. Yeah. So that's how I intentionally do it.
Yeah, that's a struggle. I can. Yes. Dr. Simo, earlier you gave an example of, you know, how you asked your partner for sweet baby rays, and that there's this stuff that you're carrying. How do we make sure that we're doing, like James says, that we're showing up and being responsive to the needs and exploring the stuff that we're carrying, particularly as it relates to women? Yeah,
so, you know, I think one of the things that we often don't do as Black men is identify actually what we're feeling and being able to communicate that to our significant other. I'll give another example. You know, my wife puts the trash outside the door. I'm coming home, and it's like, one more thing to do. And I do it, but then maybe I'm holding in a little bit of resentment. And at one point in time, I'm talking to my own therapist, and it's like, wait, what am I actually feeling? And am I feeling not valued? Am I feeling emasculated in some kind of way? And being able to relay that to her then affords her the space to affirm me and say, oh, you know, and the truth of the matter is she was not thinking, oh, by me doing this, I'm doing that to him. She might have been saying, oh, I just didn't want the house to smell. Right? But if I did not relay what that interaction made me feel like, then she can't affirm me, and then we're just going around with some tension. And a lot of the times in our community, particularly for black males, a lot of the decisions that we make result from an inability to actually express what we're feeling. So that I would say is a thing that if we can figure out how to do, there's more emotion than just happy, mad, sad, frustrated. There's a whole host, and language can really be very helpful.
That's valuable. Jonathan, how is it important for black men to show up for black women? Why is it important for us to examine and explore our relationship with women?
I mean, I think it's so important because in many ways, women are all around us, and many of us are operating in life from this perspective that men and women are vastly different. Like, we're just so different that we cannot relate to each other, that there are no real commonalities and synergies. But that's a lie. There's so much that we have in common. And I think the more that we unpack the ways in which men and women are actually so similar and alike, the more that men can create space for themselves, even as you relates to the emotions that you talked about, the range of emotions that we have, even the range of energies that we have. That we don't give ourselves space to tap into. Like, even this idea that men must only be masculine when there are feminine energies that we also can harness. That doesn't mean that you embody your feminine energy and that makes you gay, right? Which is the very surface and simple-minded way of thinking about things. But there's so much about ourselves that we must tap into and that we can learn from women. And the reality is, as I said earlier about men needing each other, we need women too. And we are part of the same community, and the more that we can get to know each other, what we're feeling, and communicate what we're experiencing, the more we can also address some of the things that we don't discuss that's contributing to our trauma and our inability to overcome certain things as well.
Adrian, some of your work with young men in particular, how do you have that conversation with these young brothers around their relationship with women? But also, what is the other work that you are doing that is specifically related to young women?
Well, it's important because I'm married, and my wife was my great COO of Dreamcatcher Initiative. And the biggest thing is, in it, I didn't have good, positive males. I didn't have a father figure. So for me to discover that, I had to do it on my own. It took own will. So it's like going to the library of life and saying, hey, what pieces do I want? What jigsaw pieces are the sky? Which one is the ocean? Right? So when I talk to young men, when I do that, it's saying, how is your household? Because a lot of that is predicated off your household. So like, let's just say if somebody has DV in their household, their perspective to women might be completely different. And I also do it in a judgment-free way. Like, I'm not judging you. I just want to hear you. I think a lot of things change when we put active listening in the picture. Even in my marriage, it's saying, okay, your worst case scenario don't make it your best case scenario. But a lot of it is you have to actively listen to what is being said. Minus what gets you hot. It's just like you get stuck on, oh man, you just aggravated me. Versus just actively listening and saying, oh, this is what you're saying. And just getting better at talking. So me and my wife do things like love languages, right? How somebody wants to receive love is critical. Because sometimes we do it in our reflection and not their reflection. So we have to look at, sometimes we want people to be a mirror, but it's not. We need sponges.
See,
but we don't want bricks.
See, we're about to have a whole seminar. We're going to start taking registrations and sign people up.
Let's go.
For this. Gabriel, you know, I'm going to put you in the young person box again because I think to the extent that society influences our perspectives of relationships and women. When we look at some of the music that is out, the media content that is out about how men should and do perceive women, what do you think about that, and what, if anything, do you do to try to help either yourself or your peers view that relationship with women differently?
My first, when you want to learn something, I feel like your parents are your first teachers. Like taking a look at their relationship and how they went and their wrongs, learning from them. Mm-hmm. I definitely grew up in a house with DV inside of it. I seen my parents go to jail because domestic violence, both of them. Mm-hmm. I think it's our duty to change that, change what's going on, or how men are violent towards women, or how women are violent towards men. I think it just needs to be a big sit down between men and women, or a big conversation that needs to be held in society. Mm-hmm. We can't have that conversation with everybody, but I believe it's just miscommunication. Yeah. Because men don't know a lot about women, and women don't know a lot about men.
Mm. So, thank you first for sharing and for your vulnerability. I'm curious, what is it that you either have done or are going to do to change things for yourself and for other people, so that they don't repeat those cycles?
I definitely teach all my young men that are around me. I feel like I'm a mentor myself, even being 22 years of age. There's a lot of people that are younger than me, and even people that are my age that look at me like, you're wise above your age, and I can teach them something. I always teach my friends, we have to care for the women. If we don't care for the women, then who are gonna help us when we need them? Who's gonna help us when we need somebody to? I'm not gonna genderize anything, but there's certain things that women do, and we need women to help us with, certain things we can't do without women. So, that's a role that we need. It can't have a woman. A man can't be without a woman.
So, James, you got a reaction to that?
Reaction, but I wanted to say something in regards to, I've known Gabriel since he was 14 years old, and I just realized that I've been knowing him that long. And this young man has stood out ever since I've known him, and has been at the forefront of a lot of different issues, and has never been afraid to speak up and to be himself. And I just wanted to see if there was an opportunity for us to say one thing of what makes you stand out and what makes you different in a world that looks at you differently, if there was space for that.
Yeah, let's do it, Mr. Moderator. You want to sit here? No, but I think it's valuable, right? So, Jonathan, what makes you different? What makes you stand out in a world that is condemning you and saying that you're no good?
I think I refuse to follow a particular mold and refuse to be boxed in and caged in. And my life, as I reflect on it, has continued to take so many different turns, and me being open to uncertainty, I think is what makes me different. I'm not afraid of risk. I'm not afraid of doing something different, because I do believe if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got.
Okay, so we're coming to this close again. So let's briefly, what is the thing that makes you different, Dr. Simone?
Yeah, so I think for myself, I try to stay in a learning frame. And so whatever community I'm in, whatever patients that's in front of me, I try to not always come with answers, but what are the questions that are key to helping community and or people figure out their own answers. And so for me, it's the power of trying to stay in a learning frame.
All right, Adrian.
Me, I like to be a disruptor. So, without confliction, we can't have greatness. So we're going to talk about what we need to talk about. And I'm going to be authentic about how I feel. It don't matter what room I'm in. That's what makes me different.
Gabriel, what makes you stand out? What makes you different?
Besides, I'm the darkest man in the room. Every room I get into, it's black as well. I got to talk. But I feel like something that makes me different when I step inside of a room is my words. I don't think I speak the way like other people speak. I feel like we're all very different, and like everybody here is very different. Everybody here has a different soul. They speak differently, but I feel like when I speak, I'm speaking from a young place. Everybody here is probably like 10 years, 15 years older than me. I don't know. I don't know. That was a little okay.
That's okay.
No pressure.
It's all good.
Yeah, like I feel like being a young person who speaks so much, like I've done like, public speaking a lot, and I'm very fascinated with Black life, what happened to us as being Black people, even in the history and what's happening in the present. I believe that, just what are we talking about? What's the question again? I want to recall.
That's what makes you.
That's what makes me stand out.
So since it was your question, Mr. Mackey, what makes you different?
That I am unapologetically me. That no matter what people think or say about my actions, about the way that I live my life, I know who I truly am. But I had to come to that stage in life where I understood what it means to be authentically me and to be different. No matter the hiccups, the decisions, or, what I've done in my past, like I own all of that and continue to build to be a better man in society, but to stand true to what I believe in, because I see that so many of our young people are easily following what other people are doing rather than staying true to what they love and what they do and what they believe in. And we have to be different.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to end it there. What a great discussion. Thank you to all of you for joining us. And again, I'm Rahsaan Hall. Have a great night.